Okay, so welcome back, everyone. I know that was a quick break. This is a bit of a wild ride, the AgEx conference. We try and cram a lot of stuff in there, so hopefully you're hydrated and you got a little bite to eat. So we're going to get underway with our next session, which I'm really excited about. We have Shaun Haney joining us with special guests. You might recognize some of them. Me. So Shaun Haney is the founder of Real Agriculture, managing one of the leading industry ag media companies for Canadian farmers and ranchers. Real Agriculture provides the latest in ag policy, agronomics, current events, and farm management. Shaun is also the host of RealAg Radio, which is what we're doing today, which is broadcast across North America on Rural Radio Channel 147 on SiriusXM daily at 4:30 Eastern Time. Shaun also makes regular appearances on RFD TV, AgriTalk, and the U.S. Farm Report. So please join me in welcoming Shaun to the stage, and he'll explain what we're doing.
Okay. Mic on? We're good? Okay, perfect. Okay, well, this is going to be a lot of fun, I promise you. When I first started to bring this idea of doing RealAg Radio in front of an audience like this at a conference, which is a tactic or a thing you see a lot at U.S. conferences, and I would talk to Canadian conferences, and they would kind of look at me like, what? But every time we do this, we have so much fun. Okay, we did it last year virtually, and this year, of course, we're doing it in person, which is so much better. Every day we broadcast the show. I talk to a wall, and this is great to see faces out there in the audience. So what we're going to do is we're going to record to tape. We're not live because when we're live, shit just goes wrong. So we're going to, right? So this will be played tomorrow on Rural Radio 147 SiriusXM. And a secret, you don't need to have a SiriusXM subscription. You can also download the podcast. I encourage you to do so. Since in the last 3 years, we have had immense growth in our podcast listenership of the show, as well as, of course, the audience on Rural Radio 147. It's a lot of fun. So tomorrow, people across North America are going to be able to hear what we talked about at this conference and kind of taking AgEx to the masses. So, okay. Here is your piece of this, though. You got to participate. I stole this from a good friend of mine, Tyne Morgan, host of U.S. Farm Report. We're going to get you to participate. So we're not going to have commercials. We're going to have fake commercials, but we still have to pretend that we're going to commercial break. So when we come in and out of commercial break, I'm going to raise my arm. And when I do that, I want to hear you guys clap and cheer and hoot and holler, and just like we're at Billy Bob's on a Saturday night. Okay? So we're going to practice. Okay? When I raise my arm, we're going to cheer. Ready? 3, 2, and 1. Wow. You guys are way better than the potato growers last week. Good job. Okay, so we got a full slate of guests. We'll get through this as quickly as we possibly can. And thanks so much to Heather and the team at Farm Management Canada for having us here today. We really do appreciate it. So thanks so much. Let's get to the show. Okay, ready? Let's go. You got to come in.
Okay. I don't know. It's like improv for me. Like, do I go? Do I not go?
You sit down.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Abe, you got it's ready to go? You got it on record? Okay, that's the most important part of this whole show. Okay, she's on the red mic. Okay. Okay. 3, 2, and... Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, SiriusXM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Thursday edition of the show. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a part of your workday. And big shout out to everybody else listening on the RealAg Radio podcast. Special treat today here on U.S. Thanksgiving, and a happy Thanksgiving to all of our U.S. audience. Not sure why you're listening. You should be filling your faces full of turkey, but I'm glad you are here. We are in Canmore, Alberta today and having a lot of fun with Farm Management Canada at the Ag Excellence Conference. Today's show is brought to you by RBC Royal Bank, and we're going to hear from Ryan Reese from the Royal Bank here in a little bit. We'll also be joined by Executive Director of Farm Management Canada, Heather Watson will be with us, As well, some of our guests are going to be Greg Lingelbach. He is with Tech Canada. We're going to talk about values and culture and how that builds a high-performing team. We're also going to hear from a farmer panel today, which is really cool. We got Terry Aberhart, Christy Nyland-Burns, and Heather Broughton, who have, I think they've been voluntold to come up here, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with them about what are some of their farm management practices, what do they do when it comes to tackling this topic of farm management, which is what a full room we have here today. A lot of familiar faces, a lot of RealAg Radio listeners. Really appreciate everybody being here with us. If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us on social media. We are on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Real Agriculture. You can also call the RealAg feedback line. It's pretty easy. All you got to do, and you can do this in the audience too, by the way, 855-776-6147. Dial that number, press the number 3, and leave me a message. Let's bring in our first guest right away, right off the hop. Here we go. Heather Watson, Executive Director with Farm Management Canada. Heather, how are you doing?
I'm doing really great, Shaun. Thank you. So glad to be here.
Thanks for having us here today.
Well, we're thankful for all your support you've shown for us in past years and, of course, today. Excited to have the show come to our conference.
Great stuff. Okay, Heather, one of the things I want to ask you about is, for our audience that isn't familiar with Farm Management Canada, what are some of the programs that you offer to raise the bar when it comes to farm management?
Yeah, so we're really in the business of increasing awareness and adoption of business management practices on farms across Canada. We do that in a variety of ways. We believe in multi-medium learning. Everyone has different learning preferences and practices, and so we have conferences like today's conference, workshops as well. We have a financial literacy workshop, risk management workshop, bridging the gap farm transition, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also have exciting tools like our AgriShield risk assessment tool, and we do a lot of research to kind of figure out where, is the proof in the pudding, and it always is, of course, but we try and look at, does the adoption of business practices increase profitability, increase mental health, increase family harmony, things like that. So we're out there as kind of the champions, waving the flag, the ever-waving flag of farm business excellence.
Well, that was a softball. Here's a harder one. How do you track how you're moving the needle on those things? Because there's a lot to encompass here, and we've got a lot of work to do. So how do we know if we are raising that bar? How do we measure it?
It's a good question, for sure. For us as an organization, we do research. We do lots of research. We look at the adoption of practices and if it changes year over year. We look at some of the drivers and some of the challenges producers are facing, but we also look at, managing the farm in different aspects. We look at the connection between mental health and farm business management. Right now, we're just finishing some research on the experience of farm women and farm management to kind of better understand that side of the audience. So we like to kind of do the overall longitudinal, if you were. I know, right?
Wow.
Big word for this morning. Do that overlook, but then we also like to dig down. And then I guess it's events like this where we can sit across the table, share a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, whatever the case may be, and talk and understand, what are the struggles, where are the opportunities, and can we help you move forward? And so we hear these anecdotal stories all the time, and that's what fills our hearts and makes us sing and really believe in what we do and remain really passionate about what we do.
Okay, so to finish up though, we just heard from Stuart from MNP.
Mm-hmm.
Give a great presentation talking about the need to increase financial literacy,
Mm-hmm.
work on farm management, business plans. Are those really some of the gaps? It's just improving on
Mm-hmm.
no matter where you are on the farm management spectrum. It's kind of just getting better day to day.
Yeah, honestly, it can be the smallest step. One of the mentioning research, one of the studies we did looked at the business practices or the practices that drive farm financial performance, and so we were able to compare what the top 25% of performing farms are doing compared to the bottom 25%. And the interesting thing is that most significant differentiating factor was lifelong learning, a commitment to skills development. So just by being here shows and proves that you are committed to excellence in everything that you do. It's lifelong learning. Some other things are, written business plans and doing risk assessments, but there are smaller baby steps that we can do along the way. And The whole picture can seem a little daunting, but like an elephant, you eat it one bite at a time, and you can pick off these pieces, and the good news is there's help available.
Fantastic stuff. Well, Heather, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We'll get to the rest of the show and looking forward to it, and looking forward to the next 2 days. It's going to be great.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Shaun.
Okay, when we come back on RealAg Radio, brought to you today by RBC Royal Bank, we're going to talk to Greg Lingelbach from Tech Canada right after this. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio, 147, SiriusXM. So you guys got kind of a look behind the scenes here. There was absolute panic as we were doing that because the stopwatch wouldn't start. So I don't know if you caught all that, but chaos behind the scenes. Greg, come on up. So this is probably a new face to everybody. This is Greg. He's with Tech Canada. Wanted to bring a new face into the discussion here today. Greg's a very good friend, and we're going to have a fun discussion about values and culture and team performance and things like that. So everybody give Greg a big round of applause. Okay. Here we go. 3, 2, and welcome back to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by RBC Royal Bank, broadcasting here today from the Farm Management Conference, Ag Excellence as they call it, and we're having a lot of fun bringing down, I think, a really, really important topic in Canadian agriculture. Joining me right now is Greg Lingelbach. He is with Tech Canada, based out of Calgary. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's really great to be here. I'm a farm kid here too, so it's nice to be in great company.
Yeah, absolutely. Saskatchewan farm boy at that too. So
Rough Rider fan.
That would make yeah. Tough year.
Yeah.
Tough year.
Tough life.
Year, Greg. Tough. Yeah. Glad you didn't wear a watermelon on your head. Okay. Greg, for people that are listening here that are in the audience and all over North America, what is Tech Canada?
Well, Tech Canada is the world's largest leadership organization. We have 20,000 members in 23 countries. I like to think that we are helping business owners to achieve their dreams through one-to-one coaching and peer mentorship.
Yeah. Okay, so you deal with a lot of different entrepreneurs, and I often call farmers and ranchers entrepreneurs, and I do that for a reason. A lot of times we hear, no, they hear Stuart's presentation earlier, and they're like, farming's different. Mother Nature will just screw you on all of that. We're a victim when it comes to farm management. Do you think farming from a management perspective is any different?
I don't see farming as any different. Stuart's presentation, revenue, cost of goods sold, gross margin, expenses, owner's remuneration, profit, asset management, cash management, all the same things, debt leverage. Every business is the same.
Yeah, it's keeping your eye on the ball.
Yeah, definitely.
Very, very important. Okay, so let's talk about core values. I think it's something that a lot of times when we're going through a strategic planning process and we brought in maybe a coach, or maybe we're talking to the accountant or banker if they're asking questions like that, and we sort of like, we got values, whatever. And here they are. Here's a list of 3, 4, 5, and that's about the only time you pull them out of the drawer. From a company performance perspective, even in farming, why are the core values of the company so integral?
So core values, I like to think of it as that's their foundation. Culture trumps everything. We talk about cultures in our business. We talk about cultures in farm. So core values are really the foundation of who and what we do and why we do what we do.
And how do those values connect to that culture that you just talked about? Like how are those two things connected?
Well, I like to think culture is core values, and it's what you tell your neighbor across the fence about your organization, whether it's a farm or a business of any other sort.
That all sounds good.
Yeah.
It's not that easy, though.
No.
How do I know if I have a good culture or a bad culture in my farm operation amongst the family and if I have employees? Because I bet you from small business all the way to Fortune 5 CEOs, most would say, man, we got a good culture here. People love working here. Don't ask people who have to work with that person sometimes, but how do we know?
Communication, and that's a huge piece of it. Talking, getting out there, walking managing by walking around, talking to people, talking to your employees, to your family, opening up, sharing financial information, sharing how you feel and what's inside of you, what's your dream, so that your children will get those, can share their dreams. That's really where your culture is going to pop out.
Okay, you just hit on something there that is not, I think is way less common, which is the sharing of the financial information part. We see a lot of times in family farms where the younger generation, it could be 40 or 50 years old in some cases, which is unfortunate, have no idea about how well financially the company is doing. And at one point when succession does happen, here's the keys, and you have no idea on the financial background of how the operation is run. What are you even getting into financially? There's ways to prevent that. Just that sharing of information. It's really important.
Yeah, totally. I don't think it's ever too young to start your children understanding the finances of your business, and farm culture is no different. Include them in your meetings, in your conversation. Take them to the accountant with you. Take them to the bank with you. When I left the farm, I didn't even know how to work my bank book, for goodness sakes.
Yeah. I can think of, there's one thing my dad did really well when we were farming is that my dad, he drugged me into to meet with the bank. I had no idea at the time what they were talking about, but at least I'd heard the conversation. I was around it. I was familiar with it. So when I did have to really contribute in some of those financial discussions, I kind of had some grounding. I saw how my dad reacted to good news, bad news, and all of those kinds of things. So let's hop back to values for a second, because
Sure.
A lot of times we talk about core values with employees and judging those employees based on how do they live the core values of the company. Got a lot of family farm businesses in the room. That's a little bit more complicated when we're talking about family. You can't just vote family off the island sometimes. You might want to. We don't need to get into that, but this is a little bit more difficult in a family operation.
Yeah, and we have lots of family businesses that I work with as well. And inside your family, you need to talk about core values. You need to share them. Thank you for the respect you showed me today. And that's one of our core values. And it really goes a long way.
So in that communication piece, because also, it's easy to say, we need to be better communicators. And that's one of those words that we throw around, we fling it around. It's like, okay, I have no clue. What actually does that mean? Does that mean more text messages, more emails, more Sunday conversations after church? What the heck does more communication mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
All of those. Communication doesn't have to be planned. It can be in the moment, and that's the best communication. When someone is doing something good, you communicate it to them. When someone is not doing something good, you communicate it to them right there and then. Whether it's a farm operation, business operation, it doesn't matter.
And it could be formal, there could be informal, but there also could be formal, where, regular leader, in more of like the white collar world, we would say, leadership meetings. But it's not a bad thing to have a scheduled family meeting where you go through the numbers, you go through the operational plan, the strategic plan. That benefits the business in the long term. You can kind of hit on some of the key issues, right? But it doesn't happen a lot, even outside of agriculture.
Yeah, it's totally not. And it's something we talk about all the time is how are you setting up your leadership meetings? How are you communicating? How are your leaders? Let's say you have departments, and some farms do have other assets that they're operating. How do you communicate all of that stuff effectively is really setting the meetings up, setting them with agendas. Come prepared, come to ask questions, come to listen. And you'll make a big move that way. Newsletters, like for companies, we use newsletters, we use emails, we use all of these things. They say communicate 4 times as much, and then make it 4 times as much again, and you'll do half as much as you need.
Yeah, that's a good rule to live by. But a part of that is not going through the motions of, hey, we had an agenda, we talked about this stuff, but we really, I want to bring up this. We don't talk about that. right? The sort of the avoidance, the procrastination. I think of Succession as a good example where it's like, or conflict, areas of conflict. Kelly Dobson's in the audience. I've had a lot of great conversations with him about managing conflict. You got to get to those issues, because if you don't, the meeting's kind of a waste of time, is it not?
Yeah, totally. It's you mentioned a couple. Conflict was one, and whether it's with family or with an employee, just get it out. It's an elephant in the room. If there's an elephant in the room, just identify it right away. Stop and eat the elephant, and then move on. If there's nothing else done in that meeting that day, too bad.
With that, though, because I think what creates the procrastination on that part is I know if I bring that topic up, Mom is not going to talk to me for about 3 months. And so it's not worth it. So, it could be a pretty sketchy process to kind of get through and to manage. It really comes down to having the respect and the trust amongst that family or that management unit to be able to have those tough discussions.
Well, that respect and trust you're talking about are core values. And that is the crux of the whole thing. I mean, you can say, well, I really don't want to talk about this. I know you're not going to feed me, Mom, for 3 months, and I could lose weight. But, I need to share this with you. And framing it. This is the objective of my conversation with you. And this is the intent. I still love you, and I still want to eat. So the objective of this is to get across what the information is. And that's called framing. And if you frame up a conversation, you can say anything to anybody at any time because they understand where you're coming from. And you can ask them their objective and intent at the same time.
Framing. Thinking about what is important to the other person you're talking to, and understanding how they typically react to these tougher conversations, and truly thinking methodically about what is the best strategic way to have that conversation. I did this with my dad last week.
Interesting.
I knew we had something tough to talk about, and Shaun 10 years ago would have just come in and said it, and here's what's going on, and here's what I'm mad about, and he would have erupted, and we wouldn't have talked to each other for 2 weeks. But I was tactful about it.
And actually, we got supper, though.
I got supper.
Yeah.
Thank God my mom cooks. He reacted in a way where it's like we actually had a conversation, and it was just because I had approached the difficult conversation in a different way than I typically would, and it accommodated what he wants out of a conversation. So, but I thought about it. I honestly thought about it for about 10 days, how I was going to approach that discussion. Yeah,
understanding your audience is we each have different profiles, and within a family, how many families here, put up your hands, are all the same, right? So just understanding that person, whether it's your father, your mother, one of the children's an uncle, understanding how they like to be talked to, and having, if you can have some of these conversations, you will then ask them, well, this is the way I like to be talked back to. And that's personality profiling, which you can kind of get into if you need to.
Yeah, highly encourage everybody to do things, Myers-Briggs, DISC, those kinds of things. It's awesome inside of a family farm unit, a team. I know at RealAg, we did a big exercise last spring where we did it, and we still talk about it in terms of like, there's the D coming out, stuff like that. It is a lot of fun. I'm an I, by the way, shocker. Greg, this has been so much fun. Really appreciate it. It's great having you up here. I'm so glad we had this idea to do this. Thanks so much. You're sticking around.
I'm sticking around.
Yeah, you're going to take some of this in. So thanks a lot, Greg. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Shaun.
Okay, when we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to hear from Ryan Reese of RBC Royal Bank. Today's show sponsor. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, SiriusXM. Who's having fun? Okay, good. Ryan Reese. What's that?
That means the sentence where your dad drugged you.
Yeah. 12:48.
An I, eh? Wow.
Yeah, big shocker there, eh? I with a sprinkle of D. Yeah. Okay. Give Ryan a big round of applause. So it's great to have RBC as our sponsor. They sponsored last year the virtual show that we did at the virtual conference for AgEx. And it's great to have RBC on board again here today to make all this possible that we could do the show here. So big thanks to Ryan for making it all happen. Okay. Okay.
Got the lights right
we're pretending there's a commercial break. I always enjoy the commercials on rural radio because some of them are very entertaining. There's a John Wayne one they play all the time. It's really good. Okay. Here we go. 3, 2, and... And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Roll Radio 147, SiriusXM, broadcasting today from the AgEx conference in Canmore, Alberta. Beautiful Canmore, Alberta. I'll tell you what, if you have never been to Canmore, Alberta, you are missing out. It's hard to believe, only 3 hours from my house in Lethbridge, and it's just like, why are we not coming here more? This is spectacular from a view perspective, and some pretty good gastro brew pubs around here too, I might add. Okay, let's get to our next guest. It is today's show sponsor, RBC Royal Bank. We're talking to Ryan Reese. Ryan, thanks for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shaun. It's great to be here. As you said, Canmore is a special place, so didn't have to twist my arm very hard to bring me here. So good to be here. There's
a few conferences on the docket as I look ahead through the first quarter of 2023 where it's like, okay, Canmore, yeah, I'm in. Let's go. Okay, Ryan, from your perspective personally and with RBC Royal Bank, why do you think a conference like this is really, really important for the farming community?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's an incredibly important conference. There's so many themes, so many topics that are so relevant to the sector and to businesses in general. I think it was the last guest that was up here saying, farming's really no different than other businesses. And, whether you look at risk management, business planning, obviously succession planning is incredibly important in the agriculture sector, but so many incredibly important topics, great speakers. We're really proud to be associated with this conference and to be here and have the opportunity to share a little bit with you today. So thanks for having me again.
Well, it's great to have you here. I think what's neat about this conference is there's just so much opportunity for collaboration. When I think about the Real Agriculture audience, we're broadcasting to people from British Columbia to the Maritimes and across, everywhere in between, right? And then you think about our U.S. audience. It's fun to kind of bring that together and learn from each other. And what's really cool about this conference is we got a pretty good spread out geography. A lot of times when you have a farm meeting, it's pretty localized, whereas this is a pretty good spread geographically, and we kind of learn from each other. What somebody deals with in a cherry operation in British Columbia, there's differences when you're talking to a farmer in Manitoba, but a lot of the challenges and opportunities are kind of the same. And so really take that opportunity to enjoy the hallway discussions, don't stay too late in the hospitality suite, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so Ryan, RBC just put out a new report, The Next Green Revolution, How Canada Can Produce More Food and Fewer Emissions. We had John Stackhouse from RBC on the show last week. Yeah, it was last week, and had a great discussion about it. What's your feelings on the importance of this report?
Well, I think obviously it's a challenging topic, but there's a ton of opportunity here if we get this right, especially over the coming decades. I mean, obviously this type of report has a lot in it it's a decade-long strategy. Let's put it that way. So it's an emerging topic within the sector. Obviously, you've all heard a lot about it. We're really proud of the report. If you remember a number of years ago, we did another report called Farmer 4.0, and that one was really all about the skills and labor gap that the industry has. And it's so great to see so many young people here today, which gives us a lot of encouragement for the future. And we did another report more recently called the Net $2 trillion Transition, and that really is all about how do we get Canada towards a net zero economy by 2050. And so this report is a little bit of a hybrid of the two. It focuses on agriculture, really identifies, again, some of the challenges, which are clear, but really, a lot of the opportunities. And I'm really optimistic. I think Canada has is in a great position given how good of farmers we already have and all the great things we already do. Sustainability is not a new thing to Canadian agriculture producers. All of you could teach us a whole lot about that. You operate your businesses already in a sustainable way. You're generationally focused. So this report is all about really starting that dialogue. We feel at RBC we have a platform to speak from. Encourage you all to check it out. Again, it's the Next Green Revolution. There'll be 4 additional reports that are coming out that talk about policy and people, technology, and the economic impact of this as well. So keep your eyes open for it. Love the feedback. Again, this is something that, I think Stuart was saying earlier today, a risk management plan or a business plan, it's one piece at a time, right? So this is something that will evolve over time because we know how important it is and we know that things will change and we'll have to adjust to that as things change.
Yeah, it's a competitive environment in this space, right? The U.S. is pumping a lot of money into this on climate practices. Canada's got to compete with the U.S. in a number of different ways. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the background coming out of COP27 in Egypt. One of the things that Stackhouse hit on is that we need to figure out in Canada how we're going to actually attract investment in technology to make some of this work. And I think the number he had was a $2 trillion number. Trillion. I know there's a lot of farm debt in the room. It's not trillion. That stuck out to me. So we got an announcement here today. Real Agriculture, Farm Credit Canada, and RBC are launching a new video series called Sustainability Stories. We're going to focus on sustainable practices being implemented on the farm now that actually have a focus on ROI, which I think is when we talk about sustainability, we never talk about ROI, and it's important. So it's great to have you and FCC aboard for that.
Yeah, we're really proud to be a part of that with the Mind Your Farm Business work that we do already together, and working with FCC, we've worked with them in the past on a quick plug, Foundations in Agricultural Management. It's a 8-module free online course that we encourage you all to take a look at as well. It hits on a lot of these topics. So a lot of the young people in the room, if you're looking for extra learning, check that course out. But really looking forward to collaborating on this really important series. And it does, I think, peer-to-peer learning is really important. So the ability to have farmers come on, speak with Shaun, tell their stories, we think that's really powerful. It's great to learn from others that, are similar to you. So thanks for putting it all together, and thanks for having RBC be a part of it.
Awesome stuff. Okay, Ryan, really appreciate it. Thanks for being today's show sponsor. We got to get onto our farmer panel and hear some practical stuff when it comes to farm management.
I was a farmer at one time. I could stick around, but
no, I've already got 3. You're out of here. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, broadcasting today from the Ag Excellence Conference in Canmore, Alberta. Great stuff. Yeah, please check out Mind Your Farm Business. It's a podcast that we do with Royal Bank. Glad Ryan brought it up. You can find it on our site at mindyourfarmbusiness.com or download it from wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes and Spotify, whatever. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Ryan. Farmer panel, let's rock. Now here are the brave, right here. Okay, you're going to go over there. It is bright up here. Yep. We're in the spotlight. Okay, so we've got Terry, Christy, and Heather. Perfect. Okay, try to keep the stick mic, reasonably consistently the distance, so the sound guy can kind of manage it because we're recording. So, okay, cool. Take a deep breath, everybody. We're good. We need to phone the bartender okay, we're good. Okay, let's do this. Just give me a second here. Pretending there's a commercial break. . Wicked. Perfect. We're doing good. Okay. 3, 2, and... And welcome back to RealAg Radio here in Canmore, Alberta, brought to you by RBC Royal Bank. Shaun Haney, your host. We are at the AgEx conference with Farm Management Canada and like a whole bunch of our closest friends. We are having a great time here today. This is so much fun, and farm management is such an important topic. I really think it's one that we don't talk about enough in this industry. We heard earlier about talking about the need to increase financial literacy. There is a lot of stuff happening on the farm. And we can, like, a farmer we used to say like he was, he had to do everything, all the way from, production to manager to CEO to HR, like everything. It's a tall order. So we got a lot in front of us here to close some of the gaps and help people out because the numbers keep on getting bigger of course, what we've seen. We're going to talk about that a little bit here today with our farmer panel, and I really appreciate them all being here. First up, it is Heather Broughton from Alberta. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Shaun.
Okay, so tell us about your farm.
So we farm in central Alberta, third generation family farm. We farm with my husband's brother and his wife, and with the second generation all coming in, and grain farm specifically, and love what we do.
You've been to this conference before, have you, or?
I have, a few years ago in Winnipeg.
Oh, nice, good stuff. Well, Canmore, Winnipeg, I think you're doing good.
I'll take Canmore.
Yeah, I was hitting on Winnipeg. My parents went on, they went to Churchill. I've been talking about this on the show. My parents went to Churchill a couple weeks ago, or about a month ago now. They went on a city tour of Winnipeg, and they loved it. They loved it. Yeah, so good. They'd never been there before. Yeah, big crowd. The crowd's like, yes, Winnipeg. Come on. Yeah, sorry about the Bombers. Okay. Christy Nyland Burns from Saskatchewan. Christy, tell us about your farm.
My husband and I are second-gen manager leaders on our farm. We have 22,000 acres of mixed grain and oil seeds and just enough cows to kind of use efficient land and drive us crazy chasing them down the road and into fences and so on. So we're moving away from founding generation management and trying to prepare an eager next gen as well.
Okay, you got kids interested in coming back to the farm?
Yeah, we have 18 next gens on our farm that are direct line to the owners of the business.
8?
They're not my children.
I wasn't sure what my next question was going to be. Wow, that's trying to tackle all that and figure that out. That's a tall order.
It's enormous, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we can hit on some of that. Okay, also joining us is Terry Aberhart from Saskatchewan. You've heard him on the show before. Terry, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shaun. Really happy to be here. So we run, we'll be a 19,000 acre dryland grain farm near Langeberg, Saskatchewan. We have a lot of focus on embracing change, new technology, those kind of things, precision agriculture, and our why, our purpose is growing our future. So what that means for us is just using these things, embracing change and innovation to help move the industry forward and our farm and our families.
Terry, I don't know about you. Like, one, I can't grow a mustache like that. And two, you're not supposed to have a better radio voice than the actual radio show host.
Sorry, I'll work on that.
Oh, stop it. I'm going to deal with the ladies over here. Terry is just on his own little island over here. Okay, so let's get to some farm management topics. Terry, why are you at a conference like this?
Yeah, I'm at a conference like this for the continual learning, one of those things that helps move things forward for the networking, and it's just trying to expose yourself to the change and innovation that's going on. I love the fact that this is a national conference and you can expose yourself to all kinds of different types of farm businesses and management practices, and so it's really one of the only conferences out there that's really focused on farm business management, and I think at the end of the day that's kind of where the rubber hits the road. So
very much agree. We heard the opening address by Heather Watson earlier here today, and Heather she poked a little bit on some interesting questions, and everybody would have a different answer to this. And I think when we talk about what does success look like for your farm and for you yourself, I interview a lot of farmers, and I think sometimes people say what they think they're supposed to say as opposed to how they really feel. And I think that's maybe just an entrepreneur, right? And I think sometimes we just don't think about these kinds of questions. We sort of just keep rocking it and, got our head down and just working as hard as we can to stay alive, and instead of thinking about some of these bigger topics. But it's important to discuss it. So, Heather, I'll hit you on this. When you saw that question, how did you answer in your mind? What does success look like on your farm?
I think everybody always thinks growth is always a measure of success. And I think to some extent it is, but I think what goes along with that is the people. Your human resources are your most valuable, whether they're family or employees, and how that business comes together. And to me, that's success. If you have something that you can be proud of and you've got that strong team behind you, that will in part bring you growth as well. So I think, to me, that's a measure of success. For me, in terms of what would make me happy, is knowing that I was able to help facilitate that happen, both as a parent and as an entrepreneur.
That's cool. I like that. Christy, how about you?
Well, it was interesting because when Heather put that slide up, I immediately wrote it all down to take back, because we're working on second-gen team building, which is, there are 4 of us on the team that are doing second-gen team building every week to try and build our communication skills, build our trust, and that kind of thing as we take this forward, to try and make sure that we are setting a good example for those following generations to come. So I think for us, success is making sure that people are heard at the table, that everyone is able to be honest and kind of meet their own personal goals on our business.
That's hard. It is hard. When Greg was here, we were talking about that. That's not easy.
No, it's a ton of work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of perspective taking.
Yeah, and everybody willing to listen to each other.
Yeah, and knowing how you're showing up.
Good. I like that. Terry, how about you? What does success look like on the farm?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think success is different for everyone and everybody. And so in my mind, success is when you reach those ideals of what you want to be working towards. And so I heard this really great analogy, the happiness analogy, at a conference a few years ago, whereas you're happy if your life equals what you think it should be or where you want to be. And if that equation doesn't work out, there's simply 2 things that you need to do. One is figure out what you need to do in order to get to those goals or that ideal, or change your expectations.
When your group is sitting together, are those discussions always easy? I'm digging in here a little bit because I think sometimes when Greg was up here, we were talking about this. It's easy to sort of gloss over some of the harder conversations. How do you manage through that as you guys are having better communication?
Yeah, well, we're really big into strategic planning. I love doing that kind of stuff and these kind of things. And so we spend a lot of time setting our goals, hashing those out, making sure that we have alignment on them, and then work towards them. And sometimes we update that every year. We review those things every quarter now. And yeah, so we just spend a lot of time looking ahead to where we're going, where do we want to be, who wants to be where. We really try to focus as well on where your passion is, where your unique abilities, and ultimately, put people on our team and in our business in those places, because let's face it, you spend 70% of your life working. And unfortunately, most people do something that they hate with people that they hate most of their lives, right? So I just don't know why that is, but it doesn't have to be that way. So ideally, we like to do the things that we love with the people that we love.
So, Heather, do you discuss the goals of the farm to get together?
Yes, as we're integrating the next generation, yes, we are having those strategic conversations. I like to think we call it a strategic operating plan, and it's important to include them so everybody's familiar about what the goals and the purpose and why we're doing this.
And written down.
Absolutely. There's accountability. You have to have it written down in order to be accountable and also to provide the measures. And it's really important to hear everybody's ideas. It's really great to see, and it's great to see all the youth, the young people here, but you guys have tremendous amount of ideas that we maybe don't necessarily have, and so we really appreciate that input to what the goal is and the plan is.
Yeah, and when we say young people in agriculture, we're not talking about people that are 40. We've actually got some people that are like around 20, which is fantastic, I think. Which is
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah. So writing down the goals, Christy, is that something that you do that your team does on the farm?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have like a board level, which is all of the owner members, and everybody has to report on their personal, their family, and their business goals. And then we check in 2 or 3 times a year on that.
And a part of that too is realizing you may not get it right the first time. I think when we talk about strategic planning and operational planning, a lot of people, the barrier is, in what forces some procrastination, is the fact that it seems kind of daunting. And you just got to realize that it's not, you're writing it down, but you're not writing in slate. Like, it can change. Write it in pencil and erase it and then alter it. Talk about the importance of that and having flexibility in changing as things go on.
Yeah, it's always funny to look back at your old goals and wonder why you even made them. The piece that I think is so important in sharing these goals is that it gives you an insight into the priorities of the other people that you're doing business with as well. So it's been, it's always such a good exercise to do and to track and to laugh at them and to keep each other kind of posted on what the new thing is that's going on with your personality or your family, what your own personal farm kind of goals are.
I won't force the audience to do this, but I imagine if I asked them, put up your hand if you grew up on a farm where all of the goals and aspirations of that family farm were in somebody's head and they were never discussed, and you just had to learn it through osmosis. There would be a lot of hands in the, yeah, exactly. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so this is some of the stuff that we're trying to change, conferences like this and things like our Mind Your Farm Business podcast. Okay, we've got more coming up here on RealAg Radio with our great farmer panel. We got Terry Aberhart, Christy Nyland-Burns, and Heather Broughton. You're listening to RealAg Radio, brought to you by RBC Royal Bank. How great is this group up here? Awesome. Okay, so we're into our last segment. See, time flies. Okay, so we'll wrap up the show here, right on time, and maybe we got a chance for some questions at the end here. Okay, let's do it. This is a lot of fun. 3, 2, and welcome to RealAg Radio, or welcome back to RealAg Radio. I was starting the show all over there for a second. First day on the job here, people. We are broadcasting here from the AgEx conference in Canmore, Alberta, brought to you today by RBC Royal Bank. We got a great farmer panel here. Terry Aberhart, Christy Nyland-Burns, and Heather Broughton. And we're talking about some real deep farm management, strategic planning, operational planning, and putting some practicality to some of the theory that we're going to be talking about here in Canmore this week. Okay, Terry, talk about, we've talked a lot about financial literacy here this morning. Talk about the importance of financial literacy. There's a budget, there's the tracking, and trying to avoid what Stuart was talking about, where it's basically you phone the accountant and say, how did we do?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's very critical, all the things that Stuart shared this morning on the financial literacy and those kind of things. And it really is related to stress and clarity and health and wellness, which is really important. We know how big of a deal mental health is in agriculture, and we're learning more about that as well. But just back down to the numbers is the simplest example. So use Stuart's example this morning of the best producers earning up to $100 an acre more than those that aren't doing those things well. So take a 5,000 acre farm. At $100 an acre a year over 10 years, that's $5 million difference. And if you take the average farming career is about 40 years, that's about $20 million. So do you think it's maybe worth a little bit of time and effort to learn these things, to get some help, to have some plan, to understand your numbers? And these are things that you don't have to be passionate about it yourself. I'm not particularly passionate about spreadsheets and numbers, but I know how important it is to the operation and how wonderful life and business becomes once you have that clarity and confidence.
What's created that situation? When Stuart was getting some questions earlier about the why of that, the word that came to mind was complacency. because we've had in the near term, we've had a period here where land prices have just kind of continued to go up. So that's kind of a little bit of a cushion. Is it complacency? Is it not introduced to finances early enough, which we've kind of already talked about today on the show? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it is a bit of complacency and just not knowing what you don't know. I mean, the reason I'm here today and so passionate about these things is because we didn't know what we didn't know. And in 2004, I was very, very young then, like 15 or 16 or something like that. Now I'm dating myself. But we had the frost that just about took out the farm, and we were forced. We didn't know any better. We didn't have clarity in our numbers, and we were forced through a planning process in order for the farm to continue on and survive. And it was very not a good situation, and it was very uncomfortable, but we made it through. And then we realized, like, hey, maybe this would be worth doing every year, and getting a little bit of help with this, and not just like buying that tractor and then going to the bank and being like, well, you can't really afford that, right?
Too late.
Yeah. So unfortunately for a lot of people, you don't realize that until you're in that situation, or the bank is telling you that you can't do that anymore. But hopefully part of the reason we're here today is to help people get ahead of that, so that you can be telling the bank what they should be doing for you versus the other way around.
Heather, as you think ahead to 2023, from a farm management perspective, what do you think is one of the challenges that comes to mind that you've got swirling around in your brain that maybe keeps you up at night, that you think that you're going to have to deal with? Is there a farm management challenge in the year ahead that worries you?
I think if you're looking at investment in land, especially with the interest rates going up, how to manage that. If you've got mortgages coming up in the next few years, how to manage those interest rates. Back to that risk management conversation that Stu had, I think all those are going to be really key, because as we said, the numbers are just getting bigger and bigger with our inputs, even though the crop prices are also getting bigger and bigger, but that may not last. So when it comes back and looking at the financial statements, it's really key to be able to have accurate reporting, but in a standardized format, so you can use that information to benchmark against yourself and benchmark against the industry, because as you go forward into 2023, you need to know that information so you can make adjustments to manage some of those things that we may be facing.
Oh, benchmarking. We haven't talked about that. Hit on that a little bit more on how that can provide value. Because for some people I've heard from the audience, we don't do benchmarking, our farm's different. That's a bit of a trap.
Correct. And it is, you have to be careful because you really do want to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. But if you can get some accurate records, and first I will say it's really important to benchmark against yourself so you can see what your trend lines are going over the last 5 years, and that helps you manage. But if you can get industry information, and I know both MNP and BDO have standardized financial statement formats, and they've got ratios and industry information that you can use to benchmark against. So those are really important and key tools that you can use for analysis.
Christy, is it the cost side that is kind of a stress point for you in 2023, or are there other things?
The cost side is definitely part of it. I mean, everything is going up, right? Equipment's going up, land is going up, cost of labor is going up, and those things, as Heather said, they don't back away following crop prices. So we definitely keep an eye on that. A big piece of that is knowing your cost of production, keeping a really close, tight handle as the year progresses on where you're spending and where you don't need to spend. So, I mean, that's definitely a piece of how we're managing, but for us, labor is a huge, huge risk for us. Labor cost is going up. We are holding off our next gens with a pretty rigorous return to farm policy, so they're not coming back as soon as they would like to come back, and we're trying to buy some time. We've realized that the best thing to do in our area on our farm is to hire people that are passionate about production agriculture and train them with the skills that we need them to have.
Whether they grew up on a farm or not.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I've wondered that's really going to change over the course of time, is that, as there's less farm kids to work on their farm or work on a farm or work in the industry. And so we've kind of always had that sort of that crutch that we really didn't have to train anybody because people sort of understood the industry. Other verticals of industry do not have that luxury, and our training, not just across industry, but also in primary agriculture, I think is going to need to really improve.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we're looking to. I think that the excitement for the next gen is going to be in the technology of it. And so really finding ways to incorporate that on our farm, excite some young people in the area, and then train them on the tools that we're choosing to use.
Heather, we've talked about risk management a little bit here today. I think, with the volatile times that we've had, we're starting to get sort of the forecast of, the high prices cure high prices. When does this sort of thing, this market sort of maybe turn a little bit, or what happens on the cost, and the margin compression? How big of a topic is risk management on your farm, and how do you handle it?
Oh, risk management is huge. From a pricing perspective, we use options to protect us as insurance. Because the market's going to be volatile, and I don't think we see that changing for a while. There's a lot of drivers that are impacting it. Participating in the programs like Agri-Stability and Agri-Invest, crop insurance, additional private crop insurance or hail insurance, and really taking the time to sit down and assess what your risks are. And sometimes those things that you think are high risk, when you stop and you think about them and you start to kind of plot them on a matrix, they may not be as high risk as you think they are. But it's really important to take that time to think about all those things from a market perspective, a labor perspective, policy perspective, interest rate perspective, and start thinking about all of them and how they will impact you and to manage it correctly.
Yeah, you said options. Brian Voth from IntelliFarm just has this big smile on his face. He's like, amen. I think options is something that we need to much more incorporate into our farming operations when it comes to risk management. You see a lot, I grew up in the feedlot sector. It's very commonplace. It needs to find its way more so to grain farming. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Are you using options, Terry?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and it is.
Yes, we use options as a risk management strategy and do a lot of the things that Stuart, all of the things that Stuart talked about earlier on, and analyze things every year. It's always different. Sometimes we use a lot of options, other times we don't. We analyze all the different crop insurance and risk mitigation options. And, like last year, we didn't, 2021, we didn't take any crop insurance. 2022, we took 80% across the whole farm along with GARS as well. So it just depends on the scenario, and it changes greatly from year to year, like was said earlier. So,
yeah. Okay, great stuff. Farmer panel, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being up here. I really appreciate it. It's hard to get in front of your peers and talk about your own operations, but you did so well. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Okay, that's all the time we have. I want to thank RBC Royal Bank for being today's show sponsor. I want to thank Heather Watson and the team at Farm Management Canada for having RealAg Radio here and allowing us to take the show to the audience on the stage, but also talk about farm management issues to all of our real agriculture audience across Canada and the U.S., even as the U.S. is celebrating U.S. Thanksgiving. So it's been a lot of fun. Hey, if you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can, of course, also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. And, of course, we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody. Thank you very much. Hey, let's give all of our participants up here a big round of applause. Thanks. Cool, thank you. Are there any questions?
There could be.
Like I got 2:45 left before I get a big hook or maybe a pheno dart in the leg or something. Any questions
I think the team can maybe bring up oh, no, that's the wrong one. We do have a question saying if you want to use Menti, or if you want to shout it out, as long as Shaun repeats the question for the people online, I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Are the issues that we're talking about here in Canada in this room the same issues that you're hearing as you and your team travel abroad across
Ooh, good one. I like this. Are the issues that we're talking about in Canada very similar to the same issues that our U.S. audience is talking about? I believe so. Absolutely. Now, there's different, U.S. farm support is different. Of course, it's a different structure. The U.S. government, Democrat or Republican, will find any excuse to funnel money to the U.S. farmer because of the Electoral College. We don't have that electoral system here in Canada, so the rural vote holds a little less clout politically. But when it comes to things like profitability, when it comes to increasing input costs, when it comes to where am I going to get my chemicals and my fertilizer, and why the hell is the equipment so expensive, all of that is the same, I think. I think sometimes, though, in Canada, we forget that we do have somewhat of a subsidy in comparison to the U.S. farmer. It's called the Canadian dollar. And so, if we think about a 74-cent dollar, us trying to manage our costs, and then you compare it to what the U.S. farmer goes through, some of those margins can be even tighter. I would say right now, the big question in both countries for sure is what happens to land prices. We had a sale in, I think it was Sioux County, Iowa, last week. It was like $30,000 per acre. It was like 74 acres for 2.2 million. And there was another sale in Nebraska for $27,000 per acre. I don't know. It feels like that's. I don't care what your pencil looks like. That does not pencil. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of common concerns.
Is that being driven up, in your opinion, by international investments, or is that?
No, that $30,000 an acre was two farmers. So that's another misnomer that we have a lot, is we want to blame investment funds and we want to blame the Chinese. A lot of times it's us doing it to ourselves. It's an easy cop. And that is happening, but it's also farmers. Who's got a bigger buckle? It's not doom and gloom. Where are the opportunities with inflation and rising interest rates? It's interesting. I remember at the beginning of COVID, I interviewed Jim Mintert from Purdue University, and Jim and I were talking about, oh my God, the pandemic, and Jim, how are we going to skate through this? What should farmers be doing? And he's like, Shaun, stop. With chaos and with adversity comes opportunity. And this is where free cash flow and having a good balance sheet, this is what separates really the wheat from the chaff, men from the boy, whatever kind of separation you want to, or whatever analogy you want to use. So, the cash will be king. It's been said a couple times here today. My personal opinion is that the general population of the farmer is underestimating the chaos that is in front of us. And I don't want to overuse the word complacency, but I'm detecting some complacency from the general farming public on what potentially happens in 23, 24 on the difference between crop prices, input prices, and when that flips. When I talk to farmers on Thursday's show, which is typically our Farmer Rapid Fire, I always ask them some standard questions. And one of the questions is, how are you managing your marketing and stuff like that? And I hear frequently, I haven't sold anything. Prices are going back to the spring highs. Well, that would be nice. But that's gambling, right? So there is a difference there. I really think that people are going to need to, more so than ever, be using the techniques and the things that they're hearing at a conference like this to incorporate into their farm, to keep their head up, to be able to manage through this. Because if you do so, there may be a few less people on the other side of it. There may be some land to buy, maybe. There is an opportunity.
Thanks so much, Shaun.
Cool. Thank you so much. This was a lot. Did everybody have a good time?
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of Thanksgiving, I now have to drive to Bismarck, North Dakota to visit my son for U.S. Thanksgiving. So I got about, 14 hours of driving in front of me.
Oh,
so
no.
It was nice seeing everybody. Thanks a lot for having me.